Hey my lovelies, welcome back to the True Crime and Makeup series. I know I have done my makeup already and I don't know why I'm gonna call this the True Crime and Makeup again in this video. Don't ask me why, but it is part of the series. I'm gonna do a crime story and I did not want it to do makeup in this one because it is very sad. True crime story is about James Bulger, and I apologize, I know I'm pronouncing the name wrong, but this little boy was murdered at the age of 2 in Liverpool. 12 Feb 1993, James and his mother Denise went to a shopping mall by the name The Strand, and this was a newly opened shopping mall and it is quite big because it has 2 floors and over 100 shops in this huge shopping center. So James and his mother were, shopping around, buying things like any other person would do when they're at a shopping mall. So at 3:40 p.m. James' mother decides that they're gonna head to their last stop, which was a butcher shop named by A.R. Times, I think. I'm gonna put a picture somewhere here so you guys can see which shop it is. And they were gonna buy meat for their dinner at night, and this was James' first time heading to an outside place without his stroller, and his mother was very careful. She was holding his hand all the time when they were shopping, going into shops, getting things they want. And James was a 2-year-old, so I understand because I have a 2-year-old as well. James was getting a little irritated, as a normal 2-year-old would get when, you're asking a 2-year-old to walk for a longer period of time in things that he's not interested in. As I mentioned before, James and his mother were at a butcher shop buying some things they needed for their dinner tonight, and James' mom had to let go of James' hand for a moment, a few seconds, to close to a minute, just to pay for the food that she was buying. But once she was done paying, she looked back at her son James, and he was not there. She looked in the butcher shop, she looked outside the butcher shop. James was nowhere to be found. So she went to an information desk to inform that my son is lost. Can you please make an announcement so somebody can find my son and bring him to me? That's what they did, but there was nobody who came in front and said, your son is with us. Nobody found James. Because there was no one who came forward who found James, the staff helped Denise to look one last time around the shopping mall until they didn't find any sign of James. So now they called the police to search for James. Once the police arrived, they searched the mall, they searched the neighborhood areas, and there was no sign of James at all. So now the police arranged helicopters, they arranged patrol police, traffic police, to look for James if they see him on the streets somewhere. There were over 100 policemen searching for James around the area where he disappeared. While the 100 police officers were searching for James, they took Denise, the mother of James, to the police station to search and investigate how James looked like, where he was last seen, what time they were at the butcher shop, so they could, be sure how he looked like and where he was at a certain time before he disappeared. And she was at the police station for 24 hours. The police waited for the shopping mall to shut down, and they went to the shopping mall after it was shut down to check all the little places a kid could hide or be locked in to see if James was locked somewhere or he was hiding somewhere taking a nap like a kid would do. But again, this was a dead end. James was again nowhere. There was no sign, no clue, no evidence of James being there. So the next day, the staff at the shopping center helped the police to look at CCTV footage, and they found out that James was with 2 young boys when he left the shopping mall. So basically, 2 boys were with him when he disappeared. But the only problem was that the CCTV footage was in very bad condition. You couldn't see or make out who the 2 boys were, but because Denise gave description about James of his clothes and how he looked like, they could confirm that the young boy with the 2 boys was James. Knowing that James was with 2 young boys, a little older than him, it kind of gave Denise and the policeman a relaxed feel, knowing that, young kids could not do much harm to anyone. So they got a little relaxed until the next day. 2 young boys at the age of 13 were walking near some train tracks when they discovered a body in a very bad condition. And that's when the police found James' body. And what's heartbreaking is before the police finding James' body, Denise, the mother of James, made a public appearance to ask for her son back. And you can see the pain in her eyes.
If you've got me baby, just bring them back.
The train tracks were about 2.5 miles away from the shopping center. And the 2 boys, this is nothing related to the case, but the 2 boys who found James in that condition, they were so traumatized that when they grew up, they, went to, have some criminal backgrounds just because of this one scenario that they seen such a horrific scene of a young boy. I don't even know if I were that age and if I seen something like that. I truly don't blame the 2 kids going into criminal backgrounds because it is just too traumatic. A few days later, the police received a call from a woman who said she knew of 2 boys who skipped school on the day that the boy got disappeared, and it was around this location, like where the boy got disappeared. But the police, by this lead, was not believing that these 2 kids that the woman was talking about could kill the boy, but because they had no other lead, they had to go and check it out. So they sent 2 teams to each of the boys' house to ask them questions on their whereabouts, where they were on this time, and what they were doing when they skipped school. And when they asked the boys, they started freaking out. And on that day, both of the boys were arrested in suspicion of the murder of this boy, James. So a little bit background about these 2 boys that were arrested. One was John Venable and the other one was Robert Thomas. John Venable had a very bad environment in his house. John had 2 siblings and they were special kids who need, special medical attention. So his mother used to give the 2 siblings more attention because they obviously needed it. But in John's mind, he thought his mother did not love him. Both of the parents of John were having some problems. They were getting a divorce, so this also affected John because his mother started drinking to the point she left 3 of her kids at home for almost 3 hours, and the police was even called. John was also being bullied by the neighborhood kids and the kids at school. So all of this situation has affected a lot on John because his behavior in school changed quite badly, where he would not listen to the teacher, he would run around, scream in the class, he would hide under the table where the teacher could not reach him. His behavior got so bad that one day he was strangling a kid with a ruler, and it took 2 teachers to stop him. And the reason behind him doing such behaviors was that he wanted to change his school because of all the bullying, and he wanted to change to the special needs school that his sibling were going to, because he felt that they were getting the attention that he wanted. He wanted to feel special like them, but obviously he cannot go to that school. But because of his behavior, finally the mom did change his school to another school where he met Robert Thompson. Robert Thompson was also born in a very, very, very messed up family. And his father was an alcoholic. He would beat his mother in front of the children. He had 7 siblings. I think altogether they were 7. And even Robert's mother had a messed up background, because Robert's mother's father would beat her a lot, which made her to do the same with her kids. She would beat them just like her father would beat them. If this wasn't enough for Robert, both the parents started having even more issues where the father cheated on the mother, and she became an alcoholic to the point where she completely left the kids and just, left them to take care of each other. So as I was saying, the mom left the kids, the 7 kids, to take care of themselves. This did not go the same way she wanted it to go. All the 7 kids turned into criminals when they grew up. They did not take care of each other when they were young. They would hit each other, and it was all just crazy. Like, I just can never imagine. I have siblings that I take care of, and it is crazy of me to even think about hurting them. Like, people like this do exist. Since both the kids had these issues, and since John moved to school, he had to repeat a class, and because of behavior issues with Robert, they both repeated their class, and they were in the same class, and now they were like the elder students in the class because they repeated. They had a similar family background, which led them to start connecting with each other. They became friends, and they started skipping school very often. So now I'm gonna begin on to the interview of the kids at the police station. Firstly, both the kids denied having any connection with James. They said they did not know who James was. And I'll link the interview down in the description box so you can, listen to it if you want to. And maybe I'll add it in this video. Robert was the first one to confess what they did, but he blamed everything on John. He said that John took him from the mall, he was the one to hurt him, and Robert was just standing there and just looking at everything.
We never.
Is that the God's honest truth?
God's honest truth, I'm telling you that we never. He was too scared. He was probably too scared.
And he said that you took him by the hand and led him out of the Strand shops.
He said that he even begged John to, let this little boy go. After John found out that Robert told everything to the police, he got nuts. He threw a tantrum. He said Robert was lying, and it was like, knowing his behavior.
Liar!
Calm down.
Oh my gosh. Alright, come on, look. It's alright, come on, alright.
So the reason why the police figured out that the boys weren't confessing properly was because they were afraid of their parents being there. So they asked the parents to say and tell them that they love them no matter what, so you can tell the truth. And it worked. The police had the confessions, but they knew that both of them were kids, so they could never be sure that this exactly happened. So they started putting all the evidence that they got from several witnesses that came forward. There were around 38 people who saw the boys with James, and 38 people saw them, and they couldn't save him. So after gathering all the information from the witnesses and the confessions all combined together, they could put up the whole scenario now. So basically on 12 Feb, both the boys skipped school, went shopping at the mall, stole a bunch of things like paint, some batteries, and etc. Just normal things kids would want to steal. About an hour later, they saw James and they abducted him. So first the boys took James to the street where they pushed him in front of a car in an attempt to kill him by getting hit by a car. But that did not work. And then they took James to a canal nearby and they asked James to kneel and look inside the canal so he can fall in and drown. But that did not happen as well. So they took James 2.5 miles away from the shopping center onto the train tracks where he was found. And on the way to the train tracks, they were beating him, hitting him, kicking him, and while they were, beating him, James fell on the floor and he hit his head and his head was bleeding. He got injured while being hit by these boys. So if attempting to kill him 2 times and beating him, kicking him, and injuring him on his head, that wasn't enough. So the boys, as I mentioned, they took him to the train tracks. And when they reached there, they tortured him so much that there were over 42 wounds on James' body. And they were so bad that the police could not tell which one was the blow that killed him. James was also found half undressed from his waist down, and it is believed that he was sexually harassed by the 2 young kids. So after this, being tortured, being sexually harassed, beaten, James was already dead. He passed away in the process of being tortured. And now both the kids had a dead body on their hands, and I don't know how they knew, but they knew that they had to dump the body in a way that it looked like an accident. So they put James' body on the train tracks and they left. And the next day when the 2 13-year-old boys found James, he was cut in half because, a train passed over him. A 2-year-old boy. I'm having difficulty seeing this case. Like, I filmed this 3 times today. I cannot believe what I'm saying. I cannot imagine how this would have been felt by the mother of that 2-year-old kid. How? I cannot even believe 2 young kids can do this. Both the boys were charged with murder and abduction. The police did not want people to know who the boys were because the public was furious. They were very mad at what the boys did. So that's why, for their protection, they did not want the world to know who these boys were. And it is believed both the boys were the youngest murderers of this country. After 17 days of court trials, they were convicted for murder of James and were sentenced to 8 years in prison. Just 8 years in prison. Once they were convicted, the court did release the names to the public and said once they have, fulfilled their 8 years in prison, their identity will be changed and whoever will expose them will get jail time. But the world was very mad. The country was very mad. So they were like, 8 years is very less for what they did to that little boy. So they asked and signed petitions, and the court finally did increase the prison time to 10 years. But the lawyers of these boys said that it is unfair for the boys to be judged like adults in an adult court. So the court rewarded them. They gave John 29 pounds, 29,000 pounds, and gave Robert 15 pounds. Like, what? Seriously, I'm just, what? Shouldn't this reward be given to James' mother? The kids were rewarded for killing a kid.